Start off with, yes, the question which seems so simple. Have you been building your own AI or have you been buying it in Astrid?
Yeah, so maybe what Deutsche Presseagentur is, we are a news agency, a little bit like the AP, but smaller. And we also have an international network from Moscow to Beijing and to Jerusalem. It always depends, because you said build or buy, what you are trying to achieve and what resources you have. And of course, we have built lots of stuff on our own. We have integrated lots of AI functionalities into our self-built content management system, like things that everybody has been doing, you know, like teasers and headlines, shorter forms and things like that. We have also been building lots of special GPTs and agents, and you can access them via your DPA ID, and then you can do things like, is this, please help me find some other angles to the story, or please take this piece and transform it into a FAQ and things like that. And besides this, we have also decided to buy things, or to partner, I think would be the better term for that. And we can talk about why we did that.
On the build bit first, have you got some, you know, magnificent building packed full of technologists who are beavering away on R&D to create all these tools?
Well, actually, everything that I've just said is very low entry tech, and fortunately enough at DPA we have a lot of tech-savvy people. And we have built a so-called AI Pathfinders group. These are people from all departments, and they get together, like I think every 2 weeks, and then they do deep dives into the newest models and in prompting and whatever. And then whatever they exchange there, they take back to their teams, and so that gets like disseminated in the organization. And those people have been building this kind of things, and we have also some coders who build the AI prompt library and things like that. But this is very low entry, and we didn't really need to call the IT department every day and to ask for some resources, which they of course love very much when we do that. And then there are some other cases where we said, okay, we need to be fast, we want to be fast, so time to market is our most important or leading KPI, and for that actually we decided to buy or to partner.
And so it's been, the use case has been sort of for your clients, but also
for ourselves.
But for yourself?
Yes.
Just for yourselves? Or?
Just for ourselves. And the one that we bought was for our clients. So DPA, of course, has a huge archive, and we have an only B2B business, no B2C, no end-user facing apps or websites or what have you. But our customers, they come to one website, and there they find our latest news and the archive and everything. And we wanted to do an upgrade for this. And for the first time in our history, we wanted to charge people for that, because usually it came for free with the main wire service. And so we said, okay, if we are going to charge people, we need something that's really adding more value. And so we built a private RAG using all of our archive back to 2018, but also the current newsfeed. The database is being updated every 3 minutes with everything that we produce. And now this is a very simple or nice looking, it's not a bot, but you can interact with our archive asking questions like, I don't know, like something happens in the morning, you come in as a customer and you have to prepare for some topic that just happened. Maybe you're not so in that thing, and then you can ask questions, and instead of you get you only type one word, and then you get the link list with lots of links, and then you have to decide on your own which ones do I choose. The retrieval process is that it's always referenced, the summaries are referencing to the articles in our archive. You can see it very quickly, you get a fast summarization, And for me, when I use it, I think in the past I would have taken like 3 hours to prepare for a topic, and now I'm there in 3 minutes. So it's been really fast.
Right.
And to do that, we partnered with a startup out of Silicon Valley. It's called you.com, and we bought a license from them for the retrieval process. But I think it's important to say that it's not an off-the-shelf thing. We really partnered with them. We had to go through lots of ups and downs for them also to understand how our business works. And it's been quite a process. And yeah, so we said we have to be ready in 3 months.
Right.
Something that has never been done at DPA before. And we wanted to be fast in order to see, does this work? Is it useful? And is this way of shifting from pushing, that's what agencies do, and I think our customers also, pushing news out there to pull, so our customers can pull whatever they want to know. We wanted to know that very fast, and we did this proof of concept, and now we know that it's something that we will keep investing in.
I'll come to you in a second, but I just want to follow up on this. I thought that's fascinating. Firstly, that you've got this, quite, as you say, quite a shift in sort of mentality and strategy from this idea of an agency that just puts stuff out there and people can pull it off the shelf, to you actually having to, well, not having to react, but the Gen AI allows people to extract. Did that raise has that raised any kind of editorial or issues like that?
Editorial, not so much, but of course from a business perspective, it's a completely new game. We are trained, and that's what we have been doing for 75 years, like selling a wire. That is quite expensive, to be honest. And now we have to think about what does this shift mean for us in the future for our business model. Like, can we combine the pull with the push? Can we do special services? Is it a licensing model? Is it something else? That's something that really keeps us thinking a lot these days.
I mean, for me, it's something many years ago, I was in a newsroom. That sounds like an absolutely fantastic thing, that I can actually go to you and say, this is what I want to know or I need to know. Is it working? Is it successful? Is there an appetite for that?
Yeah, so for the private reg, then there is people inside our newsroom use it, and also our customers. It's still in a beta phase because it doesn't hallucinate. That's the good thing. Of course, probably it has hallucinated sometime, but we didn't see it. Right. And customers can write to us, and you can still give feedback with thumbs up, thumb down. You can call us if you find something. So the hallucinations haven't been the problem. Sometimes it's not accurate enough, and if you are the one who is really like the expert on this thing, then you know, oh, but I wrote on December the 12th, 2021 this article, and it's not in what the bot is giving me now. And so you have to train people also what to expect when using this thing. But it's been really accepted in the newsroom, and also very importantly with our customers. So people are actually buying, they're paying for the news service.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Jody, you've been on a sort of slightly different trajectory, haven't you? You did this remarkable thing of literally saying we're going to have those AI-powered reporters, and you set that up as a discrete, well, not discrete, but as a particular project, didn't you? So you, in a sense, worked from a sort of standing start.
Yeah, so Newsquest, for people who don't know who Newsquest are, we have about 160 local titles across the UK, including the world's oldest, longest continuously published newspaper, which is the Beresworcester Journal. I think it was about 1700s.
That's right.
Reporting on the price of corn. And
I didn't used to work there. Not then.
And around sort of late 2022, 2023, we started exploring large language models as a way of essentially storifying, drafting out versions of articles based on notes, because the sad reality is that the local newsrooms were quite small, but they still had the newspapers to produce, and so you had these highly qualified, experienced reporters, town and city centre offices, but they were stuck at their desk producing stuff for that newspaper. So we essentially had a tool that can draft out news stories from notes, and that could be, the local vicar sending in Mrs. Mavis winning the bridge competition, and then we could storify that information very, very quickly. And the way that we have implemented that tool has been by getting in AI-assisted reporters. So it's been a long process, going for sort of 2 years. And these AI-assisted reporters now can produce somewhere in the region of 600, 700, 800 stories this way, always quite kind of routine, mundane, but important information, like the bridge winners for the competition. But that allows us to fill the back of newspapers quickly, and then ultimately free up the rest of the newsroom to focus on the high impact stuff that goes on the front or the top of the website. When it comes to the question of like building or buying, we've certainly been more on the building side of that. And the reason why was when we first started this, there wasn't anything to buy.
Right.
And I remember when we were building it, and I was trying to convince people to go along with this, Google had a project, I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it sounded very similar of take the notes, turn it into a news story as a kind of a drafter. And we could have made the decision now, all right, we'll wait and we'll buy that. But actually, that tool's not out there yet, and most of the work that's gone into that project has not been on the tool itself, but the implementation of the project.
Right.
So implementation meaning the AI-assisted reporters who've come in, trained using the tool, aware of like all the different ways they could go wrong, but also implementation in terms of taking it as a holistic approach to the whole newsroom. That, okay, if you do have one reporter who can produce 600, 700 stories, then what does that mean for the other reporters? And what it means is that they now have to get out of the office, they need to go and make contacts, they can't be turning around press releases anymore, and as a result you have to change all of your onboarding, you have to change your messaging, you have to change your targets, and those are all things that we couldn't start implementing if we didn't build it ourselves. And the other major project that we have going on is around agent building. So we've done some interesting stuff with like FOIs, information requests, we've done some other stuff as well, but that has come from, and that agent builder does not necessarily know all those different areas of business, but as you're saying about the GPTs, you can give people this technology. It's almost like democratizing the computer power, that anyone from any area of the business can come in and see how that applies to their area of work, and they present an agent builder or the product team with a fully made idea, fleshed out, that you know is going to be worthwhile. And we've got a nice, pipeline to go and build those in a kind of more stable, practical environment. When it comes to buy, it would be essentially, can we start implementing quicker if we bought it? So, if there was something that we were looking to do a big change in the newsroom that we could see in the future, maybe liquid content or something, if we can start doing that now by buying that, then we can start implementing it sooner. So it's been...
Tell me about there's two steps really. First of all, go back and tell me what it's like to be that person turning out 600 stories, not a day, but somebody doing that. What's that process like for them? And then we'll come back to what the kind of, the agents that you've been building.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the AI-assisted reporters, over, when we first started, around 300, 400, and actually there's been just over the last year as we've implemented new pieces inside the tech itself, getting quicker. You might look at that and say that's the most boring job ever.
Yeah, I might.
Who would want to do that? But what we have seen, and that was kind of the message from in the company when we first started, but what we have seen is that actually there are types of people who like the idea of working within news, but don't like the idea of picking up the phone, don't like the idea of going and doing a death knock or something like that, but like being involved in news. I think it's kind of like it's sometimes a bit of a personality thing, potentially. And we have seen people from in those more kind of traditional roles move over into the AI roles, despite the fact they know that they're going to have to produce 600 stories a day. They know they're not going to be out on the phones. They know they're not going to be doing death knocks, because they didn't like doing any of that anyway. What we have seen is that more people obviously coming over to those AI roles as we start to change the face of what those traditional roles look like. Because if we go back, when I joined, so I was an apprentice back in 2018.
Right.
When I joined, it was very much, turn out as kind of much stuff as possible. You've got newspaper things to do. And now it's very much, we want you making contacts. We want you out and patch. If we go to the Oxford Mail, one of our titles, they've changed the onboarding so that when you're just out of your NCTJ or just from uni and you come into the newsroom, prior you would have to go and turn around some press releases in the corner. But we don't need that anymore because the AI assisted reporters are doing that. So their onboarding is now something called Oxford Bingo, where they have to go out and see areas of Oxford and speak to a counsellor and get a story in different ways. And some people like that, some people don't like that, but there's options.
Yeah.
If you do, you go that route, and if you don't, you can come into the AI team.
And with the agents, it's interesting, having spoken to a couple of your AI-assisted people, that they seem to be interested in that aspect of building those additional tools.
Exactly. It comes back to the question of, why would anyone want to do that role? Well, when we first started, I was on a lot of the job interviews, and that would be the question. There's a lot of traditional roles out. Why did you apply for the AI-assisted role? And everyone's like, well, the AI is going to be the future. I want to kind of be involved in that. And so as part of our commitment to those reporters, we have dedicated time where we give them enterprise access to GPT. They can go out and build their custom GPTs, find different ways that it works, and essentially kind of build their knowledge in how to build these tools. And that's been remarkable. I mean, we have a freedom of information bot that helps us submit freedom of information requests, and that came from just a kind of an AI-assisted reporter coming up with the idea and building it themselves. Tell
us about how that's worked. You had one notable success, didn't you?
Well, I think we're now up to about 12 front pages from that now. So essentially, freedom of information requests. You're there, you've got a good idea, you need to submit it, but who am I going to submit it to? I need to now go and find that email, and then I've got to go and send that email with all the correct legalese. So we essentially gone and got a database of all of the emails, and then a journalist will come and say, I don't know, how many bins weren't collected in Brighton last week? The bot will respond, that's one for Brighton Hove City Council, here's the email, this is the draft, and it will draft out freedom of information, and then they can just say, yeah, send it, and it will send it on behalf of their account, and then obviously the response comes back into that. And what we found is that we have like a weekly email, and we just put on good FOIs, and then reporters can go and use that bot, so it's just a link to the bot. And I think the best one we've had was councillors not paying their council tax.
Right.
So the bot, this Freedy bot, runs off, obviously, of the reporters entering it themselves, or asking for that question, and it runs off and it goes in the emails, all of the authorities that the reporters were asked for, and it came back and we did find someone. So, someone who owed sort of £4,500 and they're sitting in the council and they've owed it for a couple of years. So it's a great, but the really important thing about that freedom of information is that if you think about what the response is, okay, you've got one line there, this person has not paid their council tax, but when that goes and becomes a front page story, it might be the top line, but actually you've got another 400 words, which is the reporter, asking that councillor, well, why didn't you pay that council tax? Going to the opposition, they should be resigning over this and all that. So it's a perfect combination of where AI can speed you up in a very particular aspect of the journalism role, but ultimately, it still has all of that journalism around it. And again, on freedom of information, we've also been using forms of deep research to help build research packs for journalists to help challenge FOI refusals as well, which has been exceptionally powerful, and we've had 2 wins in that regard as well.
Cool. Has there been a change in your newsrooms, as it were, in a similar way that are you shifting the sort of labour that people are doing because of the tools that you've got now?
We are thinking along those lines also to create new roles in the newsroom, but we aren't there yet. But what we can see is, of course, that, as you just described, people are now much more efficient, taking their original reporting and then doing many more things with it than they were able in the past. So, for example, right now we are working on a system that will be able. We produce 300 to 500 pieces of information per day, and it's mostly written. We also have an audio department, and we have video and pictures, of course, but the text is like still the heavy format that we have. And the system will be able to create verticals for customers and personalize them, and it will be AI voices doing little news streams, right? And that's actually quite interesting, because people in the beginning, they were kind of against it. They thought that might lead in the end to people in the audio department losing their job, and we really had to explain a lot that no, this is a completely new kind of thing. It's we are taking the things that you put out, and now we can do many things with it. It's not only going to live as a text in the newspaper, on the website, or in the app. It's going to be an audio and many other things. And that's been quite a journey. We have had some resistance, but now I think we're there where people realize, oh, I'm saving so much money, and the things that I can do, I can really increase my output. But for us, we have this rule right now, we are not gathering information from outside. So the piece that you take to transcribe it with AI, with the help of AI, always needs to be done by yourself or by an DPA reporter, and it needs to be fact-checked and everything.
On the work, when you did work with a partner, it wasn't just buying in, but you were working with an outside partner. What was you sort of hinted at this, you sort of said that they had to adjust to yours. How did that process work?
Yeah, well, we had from the very beginning a very small team, and we had a joint Slack channel. They flew in from California to Hamburg, I think within 3 days after signing the contract. They talked to our IT guys, and then they really worked this step by step out. And then when it was already like running and we could take people from inside our newsroom to test it, we could see what's working and what's not working. For example, I will never forget that day. It was already quite advanced. We were about to go beta, and then the new Pope got elected.
Right.
And I knew that we had pieces on the new Pope because we were prepared for a different kind of popes, but we had the right one too. And that's the typical problem when you ask ChatGPT or Perplexity doesn't know which Pope you are referring to, and then it's always the old one. And I knew that we have the right one in the system, so I asked who is the new Pope, and it gave me the old one. And it was Sunday, and I was on my couch. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to kill this machine. How can that happen? And so then we texted them, and the next day we found out we gave out a so-called flash. It's even more than breaking news, and I think we've only given out 75 flashes since our existence. And the flash is only the headline. The body text was empty. And so the machine thought, oh, if the body text is empty, it must not be important. So it prioritized it down instead of really prioritizing. And those were those kind of things that we learned on the go and together. Or when a model gets an update, and then you wake up in the next morning and nothing works anymore. So we really had to create sandboxing and everything else. And now we have a very good system in place that most errors don't occur. But of course, if someone wants to jailbreak the system, they will always be able to. But that's something that we have to live even with the big service providers.
Because I mean, when I talk to news organisations that have done what you've done, they say it's a kind of interesting conversation in the sense that the technologists want the beautiful thing to work beautifully, but sometimes they bring insights. They say, well, look, you could do these other things that you hadn't thought about. Conversely, there's getting the Pope wrong, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. What would you like to do more of? Do you think you're going to be buying in more or partnering more in the future?
I think so, as we look to diversify.
What do you mean by diversify?
Well, most of the work that we've done so far has been around the production of news articles. But actually, if we take the discovery, production, distribution, there's so many opportunities in discovery, so many opportunities in distribution, and we can't be masters of it all because we're not tech companies. There's lots of interesting partners, and we're starting to, I don't think you can drop names of people, but there's a really great node-based editing called N8N, which you can use, and so we're buying that, but that's kind of facilitating the rest of our build. But I think on like distribution, there's people who've been doing this forms of distribution, whether it's AI or not, for many years, and to think that we can, as a publisher, come into that space and do it better. We might have good ideas and we can work, partner, but maybe we're not the best people to do. And then if you think on the discovery side, most of the discovery side comes from either linking up with proper APIs, which I guess is easy enough to do, or different forms of web scraping. But if you look at what's happening in web scraping, is the web scrapers are getting much smarter, and then places like Cloudflare are getting much better at blocking the web scrapers. So do you then get involved in that fight as a publisher and think, okay, we're going to invest loads of time in an arms race over web scraping, or do we buy a platform to help us, do that in a good way and make sure it's all compliant and things. So I think there's lots of questions around that, but we have to be really wary about where we have our worth in that.
Right.
And I'll give you an example, is that we have help within our CMS that essentially you write your news article, and then this thing with our CMS called Martini, and we've got Martina,
right,
who I guess the most similar thing would be something like Clippy. It would pop up and say,
right,
I see you're writing a news article, can I help you out with some headlines? And she'll pop up, and then to offer a headline, social sell, tagging suggestions, all sorts of things. But like, what goes into that headline suggestion? Do we get a tech, company, a third party, to come up with what they think is a good headline? Or can we be smarter? Can we fine-tune it with our own data? Can we build in our own editorial expertise in there?
Well, I thought, especially as a local titles, you want to have it relevant to Oxford or Bolton or whatever. Is that possible?
Yeah. So something like supervised fine-tuning, you essentially could use tens of thousands of headlines that are correct and have worked. Maybe they're good for search, maybe they're good for social, but have been vetted and approved by the editors who work there locally. And then you essentially use that to fine-tune a base model, which then, without you telling it that, actually, this football club's nickname is this, it begins to pick those kind of things up, those kind of nuances. And I think we have to be really careful, because when we're giving over that kind of thing in the CMS, the number one question from editors is, well, how do we know if this is any good? And what happens if I don't like what it is? What's the recourse for that? So we've set up like little individual groups within the company, and having that ownership of just that little part over the suggestions on the headlines is really important. And I don't think we could buy that, because we wouldn't have the same amount of influence on it.
Yeah,
and
that's really
it
great.
also increases acceptance in the newsroom. Because everything we do, we always test it out with our own newsroom. We start with a very small team, and then we get lots of criticism and what's not working and all these things. And then we fine-tune it, we adapt it to their needs, and then we open it up to a bigger panel. And only when we see, okay, this has hit acceptance in the newsroom, then we would deploy it to everyone.
And you mentioned your, what's it called, Pathways?
Yeah, the Pathfinders. The
Pathfinders, which probably sounds great in German.
KI Lotsen, do you want me to say it?
Exactly. I just wondered if there's is it people coming to you trying to sell you kit, or are you starting to get a sense from within the newsroom about what they would like to have?
I think it's both, and we have a good sense of what people would like, and it's always a trade-off, like where are we moving to and what kind of resources do we have. There are lots of people who try to sell us things every day, and I think one of the biggest challenges right now is that AI is moving so fast, and if we really always want to build everything on our own, we will lose out, because once we have nailed it, the whole world has shifted to something else, and then we're like, actually we don't need that. And so that's why we have said, okay, if we really want to test out a hypothesis, and if there is a partner like a startup, because they have like a dedicated team that's doing nothing else than really trying to solve this problem, whereas we would have like maybe one person who would have 20% of their time to work on that problem, we would always try to partner to find out, is the hypothesis that we have, is it right or wrong? And if it's right, then we have to think again, will that be a core competency for us? What does that mean? Do we shift resources to that, or maybe not? And I think even for bigger organizations, like I understand yours is also very big, ours has been around for 75 years, this is really making us so much faster, because if we build it on our own, we won't be done in 3 years, I think.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Excellent. I would like to throw it out to the audience here to any questions. Have you got anything online yet? Not yet. Okay, well, let me know if you do. One here, please, and one here as well. Let's take one at a time to start with. And then
hello, my name is Wafa Al-Badri. I'm a founder of AI Human Story, and I worked in German media, in a traditional media house for almost over 10 years. And I have lived the era where German media houses were resisting distributing news on social media. And I was wondering, I'm very fascinated how in the morning we saw Bayerischer Rundfunk and now DPA. I'm very fascinated how the German media houses are moving very fast with AI. but I was wondering about two things: how journalists in the newsroom are perceiving these changes, and how are you dealing with the kind of limited regulatory environment in Germany? And did you face any problems when you were adapting a new tool that is coming from Silicon Valley? Because I know the EU is a bit restrictive on that.
Yeah, I was also thinking a lot about why the Germans or the European are quite fast with AI, and I think it's because it promises so much efficiency gains, and that's what we Germans are very good at. So. And I think we have to be careful not to miss out the innovation opportunity, because I think that's where the magic really lies. And yeah, I think you always will have people who are resistant to tech and to new things, and then you have some people who are always like forerunners and early adopters, and then you have everybody in between. And as in management, you have really to make sure that the people in between are also like going with you, and you will always have people being left behind. But working in a news agency, what we have always been doing is like producing structured data, so there's not so much resistance. I think you have very hard conversations now when you talk to people who like to write nice articles, and all of a sudden you tell them, well, you know, in the future we only need your data points, and then the AI will make the article or whatever. We don't have those kind of conversations, and but that's because we have a different DNA. And the regulatory, yeah, it's a huge internal conflict also that we have. We always fight, so to say, with our internal security team, because they never let us use anything. So then we have to and we escalate it to the CEO, and and we start crying and say, we cannot build this, and then in the end, sometimes we win and sometimes we lose. And with this case, with the private reg, the data sits on our side, but yes, it's a Silicon Valley company, and we have to think in the future, what does that really mean for us?
Yeah, really good question, thank you.
Your answer. Hi, I'm Erica from NPR in the US. And actually your answer segued to my question really well, so thanks for that. Which is that I think one thing that's been challenging is figuring out how to experiment quickly with having to get through like legal and security reviews and making sure that we're not accepting terms on behalf of the company that then cause problems, and then not wanting to like tell people to go use tools on their own personal accounts, which also creates problems. And so like even being able to figure out which tools you want to pursue the right long-term agreement with in a way that's safe and secure, and how you've been like balancing that, I guess, is my question.
Mm. Yeah,
for both of you.
I have outsourced that problem to some other guy.
I'm that guy.
No, really, it's a very complicated process, and yeah, and he is now trying to really build the process from new and to be more like faster, more agile, but we will always hit that roadblock, you know. And so one of the things that we are now thinking of is that if we partner in the future, we would look for German startups, and that would make lots of things easier. And there are a lot of German startups that are very good in the AI space. But yeah, there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to that, I'm afraid.
I would add one of the things that we've tried to do at Newsquest is essentially we have to go through those processes. So you have to, if you're going to be doing this, do the privacy threshold agreement, and obviously it's AI, high risk, it then goes through the DPIA, and that takes a considerable amount of time for both the people who are trying to implement the tool and also people on the infrastructure side. And when we first started, we were throwing everything through that process, and it was an absolute nightmare, because actually what that did was create a bottleneck for the ideas that were generally had some really good demonstrable merit. We're getting caught up in the ones that were just purely speculative. So that's why I go back to the point of the democratization of computing power, because if you're building things like custom GPTs, you can do that within an enterprise environment that you can make sure, you know, all your connectors, that maybe it might go to your emails or different data, and then people can go and create these tools, and then the tools that they create, the custom GPTs, the agents that they create, are ready-made ideas of which you can judge the merit on before you go to the PTA and DPAA, and that helps you prioritise going through that process.
So what the acronyms, what are the...
So I spend my whole life going through privacy threshold agreement. This is going to be the most boring bit of the whole weekend.
It's all right, go ahead.
Privacy threshold agreement is something you just go through with everything that you're trying to do, which is really basic. But on the privacy threshold agreement, if you are doing something which classes as high risk, then you automatically have to go to a DPAA, which is a data protection impact assessment.
I don't know the acronym of DPA.
Oh, right. I'm pretty sure that's the right one. And that's a very, very long one, and it's automatically triggered when you go through AI. And it's there to really kind of poke holes in anything that you're potentially doing because it's high risk. And so, we spend a lot of time going through those processes because of the amount of things that we're trying to do. Yeah. But as I said, being able to prioritize before you scale up to that way, when it's just sort of an individual using a thing, and then it's much easier to do.
Yeah. Other questions here and there. So start here and then in the middle there.
Thank you both. Can you hear me? Hisham Yaza from Responsible AI at the BBC. Whether you build or buy, the decision might come down to what good enough looks like for your purposes and your use case. And my question, I guess, is, can you talk more about how you evaluate and how you essentially get a sense of whether it's building or buying, whether the tool is good enough for what you need?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk. I think the main thing, obviously, when it comes to these AI-assisted reporters is like, well, if they're doing 600 stories, is anything more they're actually doing is actually good? And from the very start, the threshold of what it should be and how good the content had to be as good as anyone else would be publishing in that newsroom. And so that's why it's their byline on it, it's under their name. We're governed by IPSO, the Independent Press Standards Organisation, who will hold us to task if anything's wrong within it. We're responsible to our readers. And essentially, we're taking a similar approach to what Google originally put out when it came to AI content, which is as long as it kind of goes along the same values of like it's decent content that people want to read, it's accurate, that it doesn't kind of matter whether the AI tool was in that drafting process. So it's kind of a long way of saying that it has to be as good as anyone else would have produced it with or without the tool. It's not good enough as an AI-assisted reporter to say that the AI made an error when it was drafting it out, because their responsibility is to make sure that anything is taken out if there are any errors before it goes to publishing. And the BBC have a very similar tool in the LDR tool, which is great, and I think it's been shown off a couple of weeks ago. Which obviously takes the local democracy reporter coverage and puts it into BBC style. And what's the threshold for that good? Well, it's as good as the editor would have produced anyway, but hopefully they're just getting a little bit quicker by using that tool. So a long way of saying it's as good as a human, but also at the same time you do have to be wary of, actually, there are, potentially it has to be even higher, because if there are any AI errors, then that is much more catastrophic from a kind of reputational point of view than there would be if it was a human making, an error, even if they did it less often.
Yeah. So question in the middle there, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Christine van Damme from VRT, public broadcaster in Belgium. I have two questions for Astrid, which is one is very practical and one rather philosophical one. Mm-hmm. The first one being, how did you grasp and train for different search strategies that journalists have? Because if we ask our journalists to ask a question to the news archive, they start by looking for one specific news article they wrote about 5 years ago, which is not what the system is trained to do, of course. So how did you do that? And then second, my question is, you are now, of course, B2B. You serve for newsrooms and you provide news to them. Are you also thinking on making a B2C and then maybe shifting the whole idea on what a news agency actually is, and maybe also provide news to people as a whole and not just journalists?
Mm-hmm. The first question is a very interesting and important one. We were also wondering how can we prompt people to use this thing in a way that it makes sense. And so what we did is we have like some example questions that are already like on the site when you arrive there, and it's also for politics, for sports, for culture, and you can click through it. And still, I think, and I believe it's not good enough because, for example, for sports, people still tend to ask this thing, and I think men do this a lot. Please list all the coaches of this football or soccer team from to and give me their whatever. And what these machines still cannot really do is really maths. And so the result will always be inaccurate. And then they are like, gotcha, this thing doesn't work. And yeah, of course, they did. And so we have to explain this is not a good use case. So why don't you try another use case? And what we are now doing, we do special training sessions for the newsroom, where 2-3 people who use this very regularly show use cases that are really useful. Like, for example, you prepare for an interview with a minister and he's going to be here in 15 minutes. Ask it what could be questions based on what he has been saying the last couple of weeks or whatever. And so you get a much better idea how to use this thing, because yes, it cannot do everything, and I think that's a problem that we all have. People expect those machines to be super machines, like, and there's always the AI fairy dust on top of everything, when in fact it's not. It's quite it's quite tricky. And the second one is, it's not philosophical, but we don't decide, it's not on us to decide if we go B2B or B2C. That's a decision for our board. And at this point in time, there's no discussion about that.
Any time for another question or two, anybody? Yes, sorry, at the back there, from the Maverick. Sorry, Code for Africa, isn't it?
Code for Africa here again. I think my question is more on the financial case. Yes, we can write 600 stories, and they are great at the level the journalistic level. What's the financial kind of case for newsrooms to want to develop, to build, or to buy AI-based tools? Is it just based on continuing to feed the beast for the numbers, the clicks, but what do those actually equate to at the end of the day? Do they mean the sustainability of journalism, sustainability of our newsrooms? We can create all of this stuff, but how is that connecting back? And in both your guys' cases, how has that equated to the bottom line, to be crass?
Yeah. So I think when we initially were coming up with the tool, over the last sort of 20 years, constantly the newsrooms are being asked to do more and more stuff, because like the KPIs are sort of diversified. So it's not just about selling newspapers. You've now got to get clicks online, and now you're going to have to get subscriptions. And actually, what helps you sell newspapers in terms of doing the kind of really local type news is not the same that gets you the page views, which might be a little bit more broader appeal, and then subscriptions, where it has to be very high impact, high quality stuff. But ultimately, no matter what KPI that you're going for there, winning back time for the newsroom to be able to pursue that goal is a surefire route to be able to achieve that. When we've obviously been pursuing a subscription strategy, that's been performing very well. I think we're over 130,000 subscribers across the UK now. Our newspaper decline, which unfortunately is how those things are measured, is performing very, very well. And in terms of last couple of months ago, was our best ever month for page views. Now, there's a lot more going on across the company than just the AI, but a big part of that has been the fact that actually across the UK, all of our journalists were stuck at their desks, and ultimately they just needed that time given back to them to go out and pursue things that were not just turning things around to the back of the newspaper. So that's how we're tracking the return on that. I also think it's interesting that if you take a look at how, with AI assistance, and maybe even AI distribution and discovery, could that change the economics of different areas? So if there was a place maybe that once had local news, now doesn't have local news, is there a possibility that the economics now make sense to do that?
Yeah.
No, I mean, since we don't have B2C, I cannot really answer this question on behalf of our customers, but what we see as a B2B business, I think AI, if we are smart enough, it will enable us to diversify our business model and really also have new sorts of customers, not only media, which we also have other customers right now, but it's giving you a much bigger perspective to find new kind of customers.
Right.
And that's great.
We have run out of time. That went really, really quickly. So thank you very, very much. That was so packed full of interesting insights. Thank you very much, and thanks for your questions.